Okay, so today is April 2nd. This is the Operator Framework Working Group. I've got the agenda pulled up here, so let's just jump right in. Bryce, are you ready to talk about your first discussion topic?
Yeah. Um, Let me go
And I
ahead
can
and
unshare
share.
this. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Can folks see a terminal?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Um, so this demo is kind of based on some conversations that the Red Hat maintainers have had uh, when we met up for an internal like group meeting around some uh, concerns with building directly on top of something like Cap Controller. Um, and so we kind of discussed the potential, kind of like the idea of taking what Cap Controller provides, and instead of building directly on Cap Controller, taking the tools that Cap Controller builds on and doing something similar and essentially embedding those tools within OLM, and calling via libraries or things like that. So this is just a quick demo of like throwing something together that uses the Carvel image package and Cap tooling. It uses their libraries to pull uh, bundle contents and then apply them onto the cluster. So in this case, Operator Controller doesn't use any third-party APIs on the cluster to deploy anything. So it doesn't use this. I changed the cluster extension API so it doesn't use Ruckpack. It doesn't so it doesn't use a bundle deployment. Doesn't use a Cap Controller app, CR, or anything like that, and it will deploy a plain v0 manifest. Because I threw this together yesterday in a few hours. I kept it kind of straightforward just to kind of show that we can do library based in some form. But so I went ahead and did this make run command, so that gets everything up and running and installed. So we can see, um, if we take a look, we can see operator controller is up and running. The logs are up and running, and uh, that we don't have any cluster extensions or catalogs or anything yet. So if we go ahead and create a catalog, so this is a catalog with some plain v0 bundles in it. We can also create the cluster extension, and then we can see that the catalog comes up. We can see that the cluster extension comes up. And as part of this POC, I didn't mess with status or anything. I just wanted to make sure things could actually get applied to the cluster. But so we can see that there's no bundle deployments created either. So let me close out of this, and we can actually pull that up one more time just to see the logs. So we can see that it reconciles the cluster extension, and there's no error logs or anything like that. We'll come back here. We can do control get ns, and we can see that there is the coastal system namespace, which is created from that coastal system cluster extension that's created. So if we take a look at that, we can and so we can see all the different like cap labels on here and things like that, that show that it was deployed using the cap library. And yeah, so we can also see if we go into that namespace and get deployments, we can see the same thing. So this is the controller manager deployment. And we can see it's got all the different cap annotations and labels on here. So yeah, just super quick and simple. Doesn't use RucPack for anything or Carvel's cap controller for anything, and instead it uses the image package, the libraries that the image package CLI uses to pull the bundle contents, put it on disk, and then use the libraries that cap the CLI uses to deploy that content on disk to the cluster. So there's a PR that I shared in that in the agenda doc that is like all the changes that I made for this POC. And so I'll stop sharing. And I don't have that PR pulled up at the moment. Give me 1 second.
I threw it
And
in chat,
so-
Bryce. Okay.
Thank you. So in this case, I just gave it, because CAP is deploying all kinds of manifests, I just gave it kind of admin permissions. This is obviously something that we wouldn't do. We talked about with CAP controller, it uses a service account. We would probably do something very similar. We've talked about that in the past, and I think that that is, the direction we should go is have a service account reference that we pass to whatever tooling we're using to deploy content, and it uses that service account. And then in this case, CAP also needs explicit config map namespace permissions. And then these are the changes that I made to the controller, which is basically rip out everything that's related to bundle deployment and instead just use this deployer struct that I created here, that it pulls the image reference using image package, puts it into this temp directory that I created, or that I have it create, and then builds essentially the cap deploy command that the CLI has for cap, and runs that command and returns an error if it errors. So it's pretty straightforward to get it done like this. I think, long term, we'd want to maybe go a little bit more in depth on the cap underlying libraries that they use to build the actual deploy command, and then we can have a little bit more fine grained control of what happens and what doesn't happen. But for a quick little feasibility test, I think that this was, I personally thought that this was sufficient enough to kind of show a quick demo and prompt some more discussion as to whether or not, this is the direction we want to go. Any comments, questions?
Hey Bryce. Thanks for your demo. I don't know whether you mentioned this, but CAP would typically want the service account and the RBAC setup before the extension or the application is deployed. Do you have the logic built in so far, or how did you handle that?
No, so I just gave the controller service account admin permissions, and it's just running through the controller service account right now for this POC. But in a real implementation, we would want to do a similar service account with RBAC setup kind of thing. And we could take inspiration from how Cap Controller does it. We can roll our own kind of thing for setting that up. But this is just generally a POC of like, if we instead didn't use a third-party library, we rolled everything in. This is using the Carvel libraries. We can go use Helm directly if we wanted to. We can roll our own underneath the hood. But this is just kind of a kickstart for that conversation of like, what if this is something that we want to do or not. So
Thank you.
All right, any more questions for Bryce? All right, in that case, we can move on. I've got two demos that I want to show. One is something that's real in OPM, and then the other is a little prototype I've been working on. So let me rearrange my screens and share what I've got. Let's see. Okay, hopefully you guys see a terminal.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so there's a PR that's in the agenda for adding the ability to filter a catalog when you render it. The primary idea here is that there's cases for end users to want to filter existing catalogs. This might just be so that you can query it. This might be so that you can understand what you need to mirror to a disconnected registry. It might be to just give your users on your cluster a slimmed down view of what they can actually install. So there's a bunch of use cases for filtering. And so we've recently been working on adding a way to specify what to filter and then to actually integrate that into OPM render so that you can essentially go and build a new catalog based on what you've asked to filter. So the first thing that is sort of interesting to show here is this sample config. Looks a little bit like a Kubernetes config. That's so that we can just sort of borrow from the API version in kind definitions so that we can version this configuration if we ever need to rev it. And then the interesting thing here is like specifying packages. If you're familiar at all with Red Hat's OC mirror command, this might look familiar to you as well. So essentially here, you can say like, here are the packages that I care about. And then that's a list of packages. So in this case, I said, okay, let's find the keycloak operator. That's the only thing I care about. And then here's a list of channels that I want to pull out. So I can select just a subset of the packages channels. And then even within a channel, I can say, and only give me versions that are in this range. And then the default channel here, this is an optional field unless you're trying to filter out the default channel that's in the original catalog. And I can show you what happens if you do that. So let's just run this and see what happens. So I've got a command here that I can run. So I took just a pretty recent copy of the Operator Hub catalog, and that's what this catalog is. I just saved it to disk. And then there's a new flag that we have added here called alpha filter config, and you just pass this config file into it. For now, let me just type it to dev null. This is just, it's like the same as OPM render, right? So it'll just give you the FBC on standard out. But one interesting thing is you'll see this warning here is that it says, hey, you wanted something between 12.0 and 13.0 inclusive. But in order to do that, we actually also had to include 13.0.1 because in order to satisfy OLM's channel head requirements in terms of like you can only have one channel head, the only way to get both of those was to also include 13.0.1. So if you actually like look at what this looks like, you'll see here's the entry for 13.0.1. It replaces 12.0.3 and it skips 13.0. So this is the only place in the upgrade graph of this channel where it sort of like forks between 13 and 12, right? So this is basically saying in order to get both this replaces and this skips, I had to include this parent entry. And so this is smart enough to filter in a way that still results in a valid channel. So one other thing that's interesting to show here. So if we actually look at what happens, so this is again, if I pass the filter config in, I'm looking at just show me the alpha channel in the key cloak operator, and then show me the entries there, right? So in this case, I'm saying like, I want to use the filter. So if I run this command, you just see, everything that's in that version range with the exception of this, which I explained, right? So you see 13.0.1 that pulls in 13.0 and 12.0.3, and then everything that's sort of below 12.0.3 that still falls in that range. So you're getting 12.0.1 as well. And that's what is in this new channel, right? So like the output also filters down the channel entries to show you to only include what you filtered. If I take this out, you'll see, if I just do the existing catalog, you'll see that there's a lot more entries here, right? So it filters out something that's above the range, and it also filters out stuff that's below the range. There's one other thing that you can do with this, which is not quite as configurable, but you can do OPM render catalog alpha key packages. And you can just say key cloak operator. I can spell it right. Key cloak operator. And it just gives you just everything that's related to key cloak operator. So all of the bundles and channels and package. So that's that demo. It's still a PR right now. I think it's mostly ready to merge. There's a few more little bugs that I found that I need to push fixes up for. But in general, I think this is mostly ready, pending some feedback. So as you noticed, I put it under alpha flags. So this is sort of our first iteration to put this out and get some feedback for it. And if it, depending on the feedback we get, we'll either promote it up to be non-alpha, or we'll change it and fix it again and release another alpha and go from there. Okay, so that's that demo. Any questions, comments on this one?
Yeah, Joe, I had a question. This is Jordan.
Yep.
Hey, the one of the use cases that we've talked about in the past a lot with regards to catalog filtering has been kind of the case of, hey, I'm a person who has blessed certain configuration vertices, and I need to limit to just those that we've blessed. So in your demo there, right, we've said up to 1300 inclusive. If we presume that I've only blessed up till there, the fact that, is there another way, or is there a plan to handle the case here where we want to just say, I cannot satisfy your restriction here, as opposed to adding additional nodes there to build a comprehensive graph?
As in, we should fail instead of include it.
Yeah, or yeah, I'm hand wavy on exactly whether it would be a failure, whether it would reduce to just one of the forks as a result, but call it something like a strong enforcement
Yeah.
bounds rather than a loose enforcement bounds. Because right now what we're doing is we're a little permissive in order to try to divine the intent, but in some cases we already know that people are very
Right.
emphatic.
Different. Their concern is more of like policy and less on make sure that all of these versions are included. And I don't really care if you have to do a little extra. right? There's like sort of two sides of this.
Right, you're right. So like one looks sort of like, this is kind of the bounding box I want, but ultimately I just want something that makes sense and works. But then these are the one that's fully prescriptive and says, this is my bounding box, thou shalt not. Get out of it.
Yeah, I think the hard part is that if you, I think the only way to do this that's like easy enough to explain and maintain would be to just fail. Or try to support multiple channel heads somehow. Like I think if we get into the realm of, well, let's just choose one of the branches, that gets problematic because then it's like, okay, well, what's our heuristic for how we choose? And we have to explain that. So I'd rather avoid that.
Yeah, it gives another knob, as it were. I agree. That's why I left that hand wavy. I just was wondering if we had thoughts in that direction.
My feeling is that for OLM v0, we can have a knob that says like permissive or strict. And if it's strict, then it just fails if you give it something that results in an invalid channel. And we can make I think like that happens now, right? Like if you use tools like OC Mirror and you try to do this, and the filter results in multiple channel heads, you just get an error that says like, no, this is not valid, like you can't do it.
Yeah.
And I think like it seems like we've gotten feedback that like that's not great, but maybe that's for the set of folks that just want to include something that actually is valid rather than some folks that have a policy. So yeah, like I think it's probably reasonable to put something on here somewhere, maybe I guess probably um, in the actual configuration file that lets you basically decide like, should this be a failure or should this be like permissively add some extra stuff?
Yeah, but I also agree that the um, longest permissible chain that is currently implemented, I think I'll solve a lot of problems.
Yeah. For OLM v1, I don't think I think the way that we're implementing our upgrade logic, it doesn't care if there's multiple channel heads. It's just going to go and look, what are all the bundles that are in this channel that say they can upgrade from the currently installed bundle? And then we just sort by Simber and pick the best one, the highest one. So in that case, like that's just how it works, and it doesn't matter if there's 15 channel heads. It just looks through it. So in my mind for V1, like this is just not even really a problem anymore. But because we're dealing with V0, I decided to implement this so that it would permissively include the other things. In the future, when V1 becomes more real, we could change this to, maybe we need a different type of channel or something like that for V1 to make this a little more obvious what the difference is. But yeah, for now, this is a V0 specific logic, I think. Okay, any other questions on this one? Cool. I've got another little tool here that I've been sort of playing with in my free time. I call it KPM, Kubernetes Package Manager, which is probably already used somewhere else, but I thought that was I tried to make this sort of like look like RPM. So I was like, okay, well, KPM. The thing I want to show here is, so if you're familiar with building bundles, the process generally looks like operator SDK generate bundle, put it into a bundle directory. That gives you a bundle.docker file, and then the user is sort of expected to go and run Docker or Podman or something to build the bundle. And based on how our registry v1 bundles work, like there's no reason, like it's all just flat files. There's no run commands. There's nothing really extra that needs to happen other than like tar up manifests and metadata, attach some annotations onto the OCI image essentially, and then push it. So I've got this KPM tool that I've been sort of playing with OCI artifact things, but then also I decided like, well, this seems like a really easy place that we can add something that could build and push a registry v1 bundle without any other Docker or Podman runtime or anything. So what I want to show here is, so I've got a couple of commands we can run. So I've got this registry that exists already. This command, just I'll run this and you'll see I'm proving this is a real demo, right? So this is, in theory, this is a bundle image that will exist. Right now it's saying like, hey, I can't find that bundle image. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to say, okay, well, let's build this thing. If I look here, like this just looks like a standard bundle root directory with manifests and metadata. If I cat, this is like a very bare bones CSV. So this isn't actually usable, but it's enough to get the tooling to build the right stuff. And then this looks like a fairly standard annotations.yaml. So you've got your media type, package, and channels. So let's see what happens. So I can do. So this is saying, build this bundle. The working directory is foo 1.0.0-1. And then for the destination, I want to push it to this Docker repository. So if I run that, it builds it, and then it says, oh, successfully pushed it. Here's the tag, here's the SHA digest. And this is fully reproducible. So if I keep doing this over and over and over again, I get the same SHA digest every single time, which is pretty nice. But now if I OPM render this thing, hey, wouldn't you know it, it looks like what you would expect a bundle image to look like. So we can OPM render it. It extracts all the stuff that you would expect it to be able to extract. The other thing that's interesting here is you don't have to push it. You can create a local file. Like that. Oh, so I can't spell.
Yeah.
And so it builds the same bundle, puts it in this OCI tar file, and then I can do KPM inspect this thing. And it just, in this case, it'll just print out what the OCI thing looks like for the image. But let's see again. You can't tell from here, but this has the exact same shot, and you could do. Let's see if this works. Well, I haven't practiced this one, so I don't know. In theory, so this is just a normal OCI archive tar file. So in theory, you could use something like Scopio to do like Scopio copy this local archive into this other Docker repo, and that would work too. So in theory, we can do this for both bundles and catalogs if we wanted to. This is the prototype that does it for bundles, but you could imagine something that could build a catalog image that would take a catalog FBC directory, automatically build the cache for you on the fly, and then build the same sort of like tar GZ layer that it uses for the catalog and cache, and then push that up in the same way. So that would eliminate the like Docker OPM generate Docker file and then having to call Docker as a separate command. And it's also nicer because you get consistent reproducible digests out of this because it doesn't include anything like timestamps or anything like that that cause the digest to change every single time. So this is very prototypey. It's not in any OPM or any official repo, but I've just been hacking on this on the side, and I just thought it was to the point now where it's at least interesting enough to show other people and see what everyone thinks. Any questions, comments here?
So because it doesn't include any timestamps or anything, this could be used as the basis of a diff tool even. In a
Theoretically,
way. What?
yeah, maybe. What do you mean? Like, where are you getting
So,
at?
I mean, because you're just including the necessities, so to speak, you're not including any ancillary data that might affect a difference. If you were to use this tool consistently, you could consistently diff these things from each other. So, you know, if changes are actually made and, you know, stuff like
In
that.
theory. Yeah, definitely. Adam, did I see your hand go up?
Yeah, I'm assuming when you say Docker, you really mean any container engine, right? Like the implementation isn't Docker specific, right?
Right. This is all direct libraries that know how to build, essentially the OCI bits and then talk directly to the registry. So there's no external dependencies here. You could go and build KPM on a brand new machine that has no container implementation, container engine on it at all, and be able to push stuff to registries this way.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure.
So one of the things that we encountered, I guess, last summer-ish or maybe last fall, is that we added this thing that would build caches for catalogs. And the way that some of the pipelines implemented that inside Red Hat, it resulted in like these weird inconsistencies with the cache digest not being correct. And this could solve that because we would essentially be able to build the cache and set the permissions and all of the things in the right way to basically guarantee it worked without the caller having to understand any of the details, right? Like the caller shouldn't even necessarily even need to understand that there is a cache even. So this kind of solution could solve that problem. Anything that if we have, I guess the whole point is like if we have something that we know exactly what the contents are, there's no like extra commands that need to be run. There's no reason why we need to have a container engine that does the build. Like we can just do it ourselves and push it ourselves. I guess the last thing that is interesting to call out here is that if you really want to go digging, there's more to this KPM command than just building registry v1 bundles. So I was sort of playing with something that looked a little bit like an RPM spec file, where you could say like, here's some metadata, here's the version and release and package name, and here's where my sources are for this thing, and here's the like put all of these things into an artifact and ship that up. Like there's a bunch of like I was looking at like ways to make it more flexible to build a bundle in a declarative way. So you'll see some other stuff in there if you go poking around that looks like we can pull files and directories from arbitrary places and stuff them into an image and say that, here's the artifact media type to use for this thing, essentially. So I think there's a lot of potential that this sort of model has for pushing different kinds of bundles as well. All right, that is the end of my demo. So let me unshare and get back to the agenda. And while I'm doing that, Michael, then you have the next item for the docs issue template.
Yeah, I just I put a link in the notes. I created a docs issue template specifically targeted toward epics with the goal of trying to keep up on the new development work so that we can keep up with the documentation as we go. I brought this up at the kind of internal face-to-face that we had a couple weeks ago, and one of the comments was potentially creating a separate issue for bugs, or just kind of a general docs issue template, because this one seems kind of scoped to epics. So I just wanted to bring it up with folks and with the community, and see if anybody had feedback, wanted to discuss anything around it.
Any comments, questions? I can jump in if no one else has anything. So thanks for putting this together, Michael. I think we should try to just get this merged and see, try to start using it. And if someone has a docs bug, then we can see, what the best way to route that is. I would imagine that it would make sense to have a separate issue template for a docs bug, so that we could put a link on the docs page that essentially like opens that right up, at the right place, and people can put in exactly, and we could even potentially pre-populate it, depending on how much support there is for something like that.
Yeah, I could actually create an issue for that, because I think integrating it with the MK doc shouldn't be too tough, but it does represent a little bit more work than just creating a docs bug template. So I can create an issue for that, and I'll be on PTO this week, but I should be able to get like a POC for that in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and to be clear, like I don't think we can certainly have a docs bug issue template before we have some linking from the actual site. So like I don't think that's
Yep.
all defined at all. But
Cool.
yeah, I guess like I would suggest, and others feel free to jump in, either a single docs issue template that sort of lets like a choose your own adventure style, which is like, is this one or the other, or just a separate one that is a little bit, I guess GitHub would drive the choose your own adventure rather than the template itself. And for those, I guess, not familiar, like if you click on create issue in the GitHub UI and there's issue templates, then it'll sort of help guide you and select one of the issue templates. And then, you keep going down this path, so that it helps you choose the right issue to create.
Yeah, I guess there's part of me that would like to get this one for the epics in particular merged, so we could start having those conversations about, I think a lot of work is going to be wrapping up pretty soon, right, on these epics. So trying to catch some of this while it's fresh, I think is a little bit of my priority. And to have those conversations, and but I would really like to, and I think we could look into, bug issue templates for other things, and try to use these issue templates to help drive some engagement, or to just make it easier to engage with the community and get feedback on the work.
Okay, is there any, are you just essentially just waiting for a review on this at this point?
I'll put up a review link. I'll push these changes that I had for, just to clarify that specifically for epics. I'll push those changes, and then I'll put a request for review up in the OLM dev Slack today.
Okay, perfect.
Cool.
Thanks. Okay, and then lastly, Bryce.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring up a refinement of a roadmap, or whether or not we should adopt like a more formal roadmap doc that kind of highlights the high level known functionality that we want to have in OLMv1. I think it kind of also jumps back to we had that internal the Red Hat maintainers had that internal meeting a few weeks ago, and we've got some ideas as to like some changes to the roadmap. So I think it might be nice to maybe write up like a PR that has like a separate roadmap doc that we can put all of what we think would be, good functionality that we want to, include in OLM v1, and essentially be quote unquote proposing it again, but giving a chance for everyone to take a look at it, and leave some comments on the high level functionality, and then we can leave implementation details up to our regular RFC brief process. But I think having a high level roadmap doc would be helpful for helping us understand like where we're looking to go with OLM v1, now that we've had some more of these discussions that to kind of solidify where we want to go.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I know we talked about the project view in the last couple of weeks. So another maybe variant of this is we could try to maybe make another like meta issue that says like, here's what we're planning. Like, I guess maybe the question that I have in my head is like, could we make the roadmap modeled as GitHub issues? And it's sort of like right now we have epic issues that break down into smaller, individual issues and PRs that we do. I wonder if it would make sense to have a higher level, even than epic issue with a label that we can say like, here's what we're trying to do for, the first release 1.0.0, and then have like a bunch of epics listed in there, and then you can sort of drill down.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think we could do both. I think we could have a very high level, no concrete deadlines or anything like that, like functionality roadmap as like a doc that we could put in, and then we can spin out from that all the issues, into their separate things, and we can start them all as like the same epic issues that we already have. But the first item can be like write an RFC for this, or like write a brief for this, or something like that. And then we can populate out the rest of that meta issue based on that, and then those can go in that GitHub projects roadmap. But then we also have, like, for people who might not be familiar with the project roadmap or anything like that, they can see just like the functional roadmap in a doc in the repo. We can switch stuff around however we want, but I think that I don't think that we need to do one or the other. We could do both.
Yeah, I think the main things that I'm thinking about are we've got like the OLM v1. Is it actually called OLM v1 roadmap?
Maybe I don't remember.
Yeah, so we've already got this. And I know like this is still like fairly relevant, but I think some of the discussions we've had change some of the aspects of this. So maybe one thought would be like, can we go and update this document to reflect the current state of the world? And maybe this serves as like what you're saying is like the very high level, here's all the things that we expect OLM v1 to have in the various functional areas. And then separately then try to go like order, like we don't have like this doc isn't ordered, right? This is just like, here's all the things. And then separately, maybe we would go and say like, okay, well, here's the issue that has the stuff that we're going to do first. Maybe that's the way to sort of do both. The one thing I don't want to do is end up with just information in two different places and one or both of them become stale because not everyone is aligned on what the source of truth is.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
I was wondering, like, could we, if we update this and we link to any epics that we have, could we like just use sort of the briefs to sort of update like how, like, we're going to add a link to an epic. We could update when we add that link to the epic, it could be an issue that you could create as a separate docs issue to add the link and to update that information, right? And whether an engineer does it or a contributor who's not a developer does it, that could be a way to kind of keep this fresh. And it could be like, hey, we need to update this description when we do it. And here's, let's use the epic description, or let's use the intro from the brief. So it could still stay kind of high level and we could keep it fresh, but it would be a very small, by using an issue to do this, it would not necessarily, I don't, once we get it in a state that is more timely and coherent, then I think the update wouldn't have to be that hard. It could be part of, doc maintenance as we're creating epics. And those could also translate to what are, these are often going to be prototypes for release notes, right? So again, we can think of ways to fold in the content that we're already creating, using that epic or using the template or using issues. Sorry.
Yeah, I think I lean towards issues primarily because they're easier to edit and they're a little bit more they're just like more flexible, and to me it seems like at least more productive in terms of like, well, here's a tweak that we decided we were going to make, so I added a comment and changed the description, and we're just going to keep on moving, rather than like if it's in this doc then that means a PR and lots of back and forth, and it's a little bit less efficient that way. On the flip side, it may be a little bit less official too. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like we're at the stage now where we just need to make progress and keep people informed of the progress, rather than like always try to build consensus on every single decision that we're going to make.
Yeah, and maybe I'm conflating roadmap with kind of ironing out some of the things that we've talked about, proposing as changes to OLM 1 regarding things like supporting, like using cluster extension and extension APIs, having both of them, having Helm supporting Helm charts for operators, things like that. And maybe issues is better for that. I'm fine with whatever. But maybe Joe, you, Jordan, and I'm saying Jordan because he commented he was pinging you about this independently of this meeting. Maybe we can, because we've only got 8 minutes left in this meeting, maybe we can kind of offline async iron out some of the details of like how we want to set up the work items for the near future, and do like the first few things, and then we can kind of see what we don't like about it, and then expand that to the rest of the stuff that we want to propose or work on going forward.
I think that's a good idea. This seems like one of those things that it's like, let's just get a couple people who are interested in it just in a room and put it together and propose it and say like, here's what we did. Unless you really hate this is what we're going to go with.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, cool. I can start like a thread or something, or schedule a meeting if that's preferred.
Yeah, why don't you just schedule a meeting? I feel like we can rip through this pretty quickly if we can get together.
Okay, cool. I'll try to schedule something for sometime this week, if today doesn't work, and kind of I'll share it with the community too for anybody interested in joining.
Perfect. Thanks, Bryce.
Yep.
Anything else to discuss in the last 7 minutes here? Okay, I think that'll do it then. Thanks, everybody.
Cool. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks.